Good morning. I will now call to order the September 28, 2022 Clackamas County Board of Commissioners Land Use Meeting. I will now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We are holding this meeting in person and virtually. If you've joined us via Zoom for this meeting and are interested in providing public comment, we will prompt you regarding how to do that when the time is right. Today, we will consider ZDO-284, a proposed legislative text amendment to the Clackamas County Comprehensive Plan involving transportation-related projects in the Damascus area. General public comment will be taken at the usual allotted time. As always, the public is welcome to sign up to testify. For those attending in person, please fill out a blue card and place it in the basket, and you will be called on to provide your testimony at the appropriate time. I would like to remind all participants, including staff, all elected officials, and members of the public, that Robert's Rules of Order will be enforced in this meeting. We welcome your opinions and look forward to your polite participation. The hearing on ZDO-284 will proceed as follows. Number one, we will first hear a presentation from Principal Transportation Planner Stephen Williams. Number two, next I will open the public hearing for public testimony, beginning with public officials who will have 5 minutes each. Three, then representatives from recognized community planning organizations and agencies will have 3 minutes each. Finally, others wishing to testify will have 3 minutes each. The board will then deliberate and either render a decision today or set a time to make a decision at a later date. Assisting us in the hearing room is our board clerk, Tony Mayernick, Principal Transportation Planner Stephen Williams, as I mentioned before, and Assistant County Counsel Nate Boderman. I will now have a staff presentation. Tony, with the PowerPoint.
And Chair Smith, before we jump in, we did not take roll. We usually don't take roll before land use hearings. I just wanted to clarify for the record that we do have 2 commissioners present here today, and Commissioner Fisher is attending by Zoom virtually, correct?
Yep.
Thank you.
And we have a quorum. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Chair Smith. As noted this morning, we are here to discuss an amendment to the Comprehensive Plan ZDO 284. This will add the former area of the city of Damascus into our transportation system plan, as well as a number of projects that we've identified that need to take place in that area over the course of coming years. To address traffic and safety situations within the area of the former city. There's a requirement under Oregon law. Is my mic on, by the way? I can't tell one way or the other.
Yes, it is.
Oh, thank you very much, Tony. When there's a requirement under Oregon law that all areas within a local government be addressed in an adopted transportation system plan. When the city of Damascus disincorporated in 2016, it created an area of unincorporated Clackamas County that was not included in our transportation system plan. So we've been working for the last couple of years to update our transportation system plan for that area. ZDO, let's see, let me advance this thing. Oh, we advanced a lot further than we wanted to.
This is slide 1.
Okay, very good. ZDO 284 proposes 3 legislative amendments to the county's comprehensive plan for the Damascus area. It adds some projects, road projects within the Damascus area to Transportation System Plan Tables 8-3A, 5-3A through 5-3D. It adds Damascus area road projects to the Transportation System Plan map 5-11A. And it adds the Damascus Mobility Plan document itself to Appendix B and makes some minor text amendments to Chapter 5 of the Transportation System Plan. The main projects that are being added to the plan are really fall into several categories. One is projects that are related to future intersection delay, and so they're intersection improvement projects, and many of them are actually safety projects. One of the things that was done as part of this study was an analysis of intersections of local roads with Oregon 212, and so several of these projects are actually improvements on the local road side of those intersections, addition of turn lanes, things like that. These projects have been prioritized using the county's transportation system plan criteria that were adopted when the transportation system plan was last updated in 2013. And these incorporate public feedback from actually 3 meetings of county staff with the Damascus CPO, one in March, one in April, and one just recently here. The draft project list prioritizes the projects into 3 tiers. And I think you're going to have to push the button. Okay. Well, the draft project list prioritizes county projects into the 3 tiers that are used in the Clackamas County TSP. Tier 1 are 20-year capital projects. These are projects that are matched with available funding that we expect to have available within the next 20 years. Tier 2 projects are what we call preferred capital projects. These are needed projects that do not have identified funding at this time. And then Tier 3 are long-term capital projects that would be beneficial if funds were available to do those projects. Could we advance to the map that says proposed Damascus area projects? There you go. One thing that you should be aware of is that while we were undertaking this project, the city of Happy Valley was conducting a similar project for the area that is within their UGMA, their urban growth management area on the east side of the city, so that they're to create sort of continuous planning for transportation improvements between the existing east side of Happy Valley and extending all the way out to the area that was within the Damascus city limits. And as you can see, they fit together there in the middle where they meet. Why don't you go ahead, Tony? So we had an extensive public engagement process. We started with a public engagement meeting to gather data. We held a public open house in August of last year. We had a public open house to review the potential projects that were being considered for the plan last winter. We presented a report to the community as well as the Planning Commission and the board in the spring of this year, and now we are here before you to consider this plan for adoption. Why don't you go ahead? So our main project tasks were to evaluate existing and future traffic volumes and crash patterns, analyze transportation alternatives for the Damascus area and the 212 intersections, prioritize projects, and incorporate the public feedback that we received with regard to the final project list. Go ahead. I've already done that slide. Go ahead. Okay, and so here are the projects on a map that have been proposed within the Damascus area. These are the ones that are highlighted in yellow are projects that are included in the Damascus plan. The Tier 1 projects are green. So, for example, Tillstrom Road, right there in the middle, is an example of one. The Tier 2 projects are in sort of goldenrod, and the Tier 3 projects are in a red color. Why don't you go ahead? So the Planning Commission conducted a hearing on August 22nd, 2022 on ZDO 284. Two members of the public testified at the Planning Commission and raised some significant issues. One was concern about improvements to the intersection of Oregon 212 and Sunnyside Road that could result in additional traffic on Southeast 187th, which is actually within Happy Valley's UGB, as well as being in Happy Valley's planning area. So we have actually been discussing that project with Happy Valley, and the staff from the county, the city of Happy Valley, and ODOT agreed that any issues related to additional traffic on Southeast 187th would be studied and resolved before the intersection improvements at Oregon 212 and Sunnyside Road moved forward. Could we move on to the next slide? Another concern was raised that if certain road projects in Damascus take place before the improvement to Oregon 212 and Sunnyside Road, that the results would be increased traffic on some local roads. And particularly projects and roads that were mentioned were project number 1140, which is improvements on Foster Road, specifically at the intersection of Foster Road and 212. Project number 1141, which is Sunnyside Road. Project number 1142, which is on Sunshine Valley Road. 1143, which is on Tillstrom Road. 2045, which is on 190th. And 2046 or 2046, which is also at 190th. And so the Planning Commission, in their motion, go ahead, in their motion, recommended that those projects not move forward until the improvements were made at the intersection of Sunnyside Road and Oregon 212. Staff considered those, studied those conditions that were identified by the Planning Commission, and would like to present a couple of issues that we think should be considered. One is that the 6 projects that were referenced that I named here a moment ago are safety projects. They are not capacity projects, and they would not result in any additional traffic at the intersection of Oregon 212 and Sunnyside Road. They would basically improve safety in the area by providing paved shoulders and, in one case, realigning an intersection. The second thing that I'd like to call to your attention is that although the improvements to Oregon 212 and Sunnyside Road intersection are in ODOT's list of projects, no money has been allocated for that project in the State Transportation Improvement Program, and ODOT has not begun the process of doing design studies and analysis. So it is altogether possible that it will be many years before the Oregon 212 Sunnyside Road project actually proceeds. You want to go ahead? So the Planning Commission action was that the 6 projects I named earlier should not proceed, we would like to suggest that delaying implementation of those safety projects will reduce safety on the county road system without resulting in any improvement with regard to the traffic or safety at the intersection of Oregon 212 and Sunnyside Road. Want to go ahead? And so we would like today to recommend to you approval of ZDO 284 as recommended by the Planning Commission, with the exception of the conditions that those 6 projects I named be contingent on intersection improvements at Oregon 212 and Sunnyside Road by the Oregon Department of Transportation. So that concludes my presentation, but I'd be happy to respond to any questions that members of the board or the public might have. It has been an extensive planning process, and lots of issues have been raised.
Thank you, Steve. I will now entertain questions from the commission. I do have a couple questions for you. Tony, can you go back and pull up the map that lists all the tiered projects, please? And in this map are tiers 1, 2, and 3. I see your light is on, Tony? Okay. Commissioner Fisher, I'll call on you when I finish. Thank you for chiming in. So on the Tier 1 safety projects, when do you think the county will engage in fixing those?
Well, that is a question of really the funding and how it fits in with the rest of the county's proposed projects. I'm not in a position to address, those sort of funding or prioritization questions.
I would like somebody in the staff to address if there is funding available for the Tier 1 projects, specifically Sunnyside Road, Foster Road, as it intersects with Highway 212. Thank you, Mike Besner, Department of Transportation, for coming forward.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking the question. So Tier 1 in our TSP is based on the amount of money we believe we will have available within a 20-year period. And that's how we came up with that. And it's roughly 15% of the projects in our TSP. So this is new, and now we will have to take these new projects once adopted. Now because they're not projects until you gavel. Once they are, as Steve was mentioning, we'll take these and we'll stack them up with the rest of the county and figure out what opportunities we have here. In Damascus, we have some unique opportunities because for at least a few more years, we have a separate pot of money for Damascus that the state legislature gave us. And there's some money in there that we held off until we actually knew what projects we were going to have. So we also have the Community Road Fund safety pot of money. And then again, once these projects exist, we'll be able to consider using some of that as well.
Okay. I know this is a very busy intersection. The improvements are very necessary, although it doesn't increase capacity. I understand the Planning Commission is trying to bring ODOT's attention to this project. So if it's going to take 20 years for the Tier 1?
All of Tier 1.
All of Tier 1.
Yeah, which is a lot. And so
it's a lot, and it's highlighted green on the map. And then Tier 2, which is yellow on the map, would take more than 20 years.
So theoretically.
Theoretically, unless we have a whole bunch of money coming in.
Well, so Tier 2 is the next 15%. And when we did that 10 years ago, we said, all right, we think we're going to have this much money, but what if we're wrong? Right? So we want to have a second list that we could pull from. And we do Tier 2 projects when a certain funding source is made available that really applies to that project and not something else. So it doesn't mean they won't happen.
So a Tier 2 theoretically could come and be ahead of a Tier 1 project depending on the funding source.
Correct.
Oh, that's interesting to note. Okay. Very good. For now, that's all the questions I have. Thank you for coming forward. Commissioner Fisher, you're online.
Thank you, Chair Smith, and thank you for the
Steve?
They go through a process, Commissioner, where they look at projects on the state highways. They evaluate them based on various criteria, including safety, road capacity, road condition, and other issues like that. And then each of the regions, so we're in Region 1 here, Damascus is in Region 1, each of the regions weighs in on what they think should be the priorities. And so the Area Commission on Transportation, the ACT, where Commissioner Savas represents the county, weighs in on what the priorities should be. And so they go through this process every time they update their state transportation improvement program. And as you know, that ultimately goes through a public process of its own and ultimately goes to the Oregon Transportation Commission. So the county does have the ability to speak to the Transportation Commission, the ACT, and advocate for projects like the 212 Sunnyside Road intersection project, but there are no guarantees. It's, if you will, it's a competitive process.
Okay. Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, and the time frame for that, do you know when they're going to review and add to their plan?
It's just about a continuous process. The most recent STIP runs through 2027, I think. Yeah, it runs through 2027, and so they will actually begin the process of releasing drafts, soliciting projects, and conducting public input next year.
Thank you. Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, so that's all the questions I have for now. I may have more after we hear from the public.
Yes, that would be fine. You will have an opportunity then as well. Thank you. Commissioner Scholl?
Yes, Mr. Williams. The Planning Commission has expressed concern about the idea to improve shoulders in the Damascus area. Now, for people who are listening who don't know that area very well, there are very few, if any, sidewalks, okay? In areas where there is no shoulder, I mean, from the outside white line of the lane, a foot over, you have a ditch or blackberries. So for somebody who's walking or somebody riding a bike on those type roads, there's really nowhere to go except for jump off the side of the road if a car comes. So widening or providing shoulders on those roads is a safety concern. I have a letter here from Mr. Tom Griswold from Damascus, who shared with us that not too long ago, a young person lost her life in an area where there was no place for her to walk safely along the road. So could you explain the Planning Commission's concern for the record, how the improvement of the shoulders will not affect or attract greater transportation loads on those roads?
Yeah. This has been an issue that's actually been under study nationwide in the past 10 to 15 years, even back into the 90s, because you can imagine there are many, many miles of two-lane rural roads that are very similar to the roads that you find in Damascus. And some states have been experimenting with adding full shoulders to those roads as a safety measure, and then they have been studying the impact that that has on traffic and safety. And what they found was it resulted in a substantial improvement in safety. both, for pedestrians and bicyclists who might be using those roads, but also because it creates some area so that if a driver maybe loses concentration or swerves for just a moment, they have that shoulder to go onto and then come back rather than just going into the ditch. What the research has shown in recent years has been that the addition of those shoulders results in a very large improvement in safety. But the other thing the research showed was almost no change in the traffic volume occurred as a result of those changes. And so that's been identified as a best practice for rural roads, particularly those that have higher volumes or higher speeds.
Okay, thank you. The other issue expressed by a constituent is that Happy Valley's got a plan to improve 187th. People who want to avoid the intersection at Sunnyside Road, Foster, 212, I know because I go there every day, I see more traffic coming down 187th. The improvement of the intersection that I just mentioned would reduce any need for somebody to come down 187th. So my question for you, Mr. Williams, is what can we do, in your opinion, to put pressure on ODOT and the State Transportation Improvement Program to increase or move up the priority of that intersection? And let me add one more thing, please. That intersection is also causing a backup of traffic in the morning westbound and a backup of traffic in the evening eastbound. And I believe fixing that intersection would alleviate that congestion to a degree. Although the people of East County long hope, wish for that Sunrise Highway idea that's been kicking around since Hector Heathcote was a pup. And I know we can't address that today, but if you could share with us your opinion on how we could put pressure on ODOT to increase the priority of that project, I'd appreciate it.
And I think the first thing that has to happen before any improvements on 212 could occur would be a planning study that identified what those specific improvements would be and looked at the conditions that would result within the surrounding road system. And the participants in that study would need to be ODOT, the county, and the city of Happy Valley. And so that is the first step that has to occur. What would come out of that study would be recommendations for the types of improvements, some conceptual designs for the improvements, and then ultimately specific recommendations for how the succeeding studies would proceed and how those projects should ultimately be funded. So getting that first study underway is definitely the next step.
Okay, and one final question, please. There currently is a study, the Sunrise Corridor study, a $4 million study to look at that issue. The intersection we're talking about now is not included in that study, is it?
No, that extends out as far as 172nd.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, I wanted that clarified for people who are going to be watching this to understand that. Thank you.
Tony, before we proceed, can you roll up the screen? Thank you.
Yes, Chair.
Thanks, Tony. I will now open public testimony on this item, beginning with public officials. Are there any public officials in the room or via Zoom who would like to testify? You will have 5 minutes each. Seeing none. Are there any representatives from any CPOs or agencies that wish to testify? You will have 3 minutes. Seeing none in the room. Tony, anybody online?
Not at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay. We will now hear testimony from members of the public. I will call the names of people who have indicated an intent to testify. However, there are none in the room either. Tony, do we have anybody on Zoom who would like to talk today?
If you would like to testify on this topic, please use the raise hand feature, and I will call on you in the order received. Madam Chair, I do not have any hands raised.
Okay, thank you. I do have one final question on an email that was sent in, I think, last night, and the staff report somehow makes note of it. And that is from Mr. Tom Griswold. He talks about, I am concerned about the impact to local streets that the Pleasant Valley / North Carver Comprehensive Plan proposed by the City of Happy Valley, that's a mouthful, specifically the impact to 187th, which is a gravel road that runs between Highway 212 and Sunnyside Road. Is there a gravel road out there?
187th is a gravel road.
For how far?
It's less than a mile long between Sunnyside and 212, and it is a gravel road for its entire length.
I'm surprised, that's a county-owned road?
Yes, it is.
I'm very surprised that we still have a gravel road in a unincorporated area, but as it almost acts like a city. Why isn't it paved?
That's one that I can't answer. I can tell you what the condition is now. I don't know if it's ever been put forward for
Is it heavily
paving.
traveled?
As far as I know, the only travel on it right now is the residents that live right on that road. The traffic is very light.
So it's not a through road?
It does go through from 212 to Sunnyside Road, but because it's a gravel road, it gets almost no use, except for the local residents.
I wonder if Mike Besner can shed any light on my question from the Department of Transportation, Development and Transportation. Mike, I'm putting you on the spot here, but it has been raised, and we probably should try to address it.
Yeah, I'll have to look into it. I can't shed light on that. We have, I want to say, 4 miles of gravel roads that the county owns out of 1,400. So it's virtually none, but it's not none.
So do we maintain this gravel road?
If it's a county road, we would.
Okay, how often do you re-gravel it? Do you
I have
oil
to-
and
I'd-
gravel? Do you snow plow it in the winter, which this area probably doesn't get a lot of snow?
Yeah, I'm guessing that road would not get plowed. Our routine gravel maintenance is probably reblading the roads and making sure they're safe and traversable. But the reason we have them, as Steve mentioned, is the traffic on them is usually very, very light.
Thank you, Mike. I should have closed the testimony on this hearing before I asked the question, but that's all right. Commissioner Fisher, do you have anything additionally you would like to say?
Not at this time.
Thank you. I will now entertain a motion for approval of the ZDO as recommended by staff.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Scholl has moved for approval of the ZDO-284 as recommended by staff. Commissioner Fisher has seconded that motion. Any further discussion?
I'd just like to
Chair
say,
Smith? Oh, sorry. I just butted in here. I apologize. I just want to say that I think we will probably have consensus among us that we need to do a better job advocating with ODOT and the Oregon Transportation Commission on the transportation projects that are important to Clackamas County. So I just want to flag this for staff to alert us when the time is right for us to bring these concerns forward for this important capacity project brought up by the Planning Commission and that's been reviewed in our presentation today.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Commissioner Scholl?
yes, I'd just like to say, I appreciate the expertise and the effort and time of the Planning Commission on this issue.
Thank you for that for Commissioner Scholl. I do too appreciate what the Planning Commission is trying to do to shed light on this very important area. And along with what Commissioner Fisher says, we are bringing light to ODOT on a variety of transportation issues in this county, and our transportation and planning staff is working very hard on juggling a lot of balls, mainly with the tolling issue. Has taken up a lot of our time. However, other areas are still being attended to, I think. You know, we can only have so many priorities, and then after all, nothing becomes a priority. So we will, like Mike, you said, keep a look at the pots of money coming in and how best we can use those. Seeing no further communication on this, Tony, would you like to take the poll?
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 3-0. Thank you very much, commissioners. Now that the proposal has been approved, I will direct staff to draft an ordinance reflecting this decision and include it on the agenda for this board's adoption at a future business meeting. I think that's all I need to do at this point. Is that right, County Council?
That's
Nate
correct. You
Voderman?
can gavel us out, and we can be on our way.
And you haven't said anything today.
No need. Steve did it all.
Thank you. Thank you. Seeing no further business before this Board of County Commissioners, we are adjourned.